Assalamualaikum and good afternoon everyone. So we are here to present a subject international economy with our topic today is tariff war when trade wars goes up. In this presentation, we are going to explore what is actually happened when countries put up walls on trade through tariff and other restrictions. And also, we're going to show you how this actually played out for Malaysia in 2025. We give an example of two real cases study. Our group researched and put together in this presentation, and we will take turn by covering different sections. And now, I will pass to Yasmin, who will start us off with what is actually tariff is.
Thanks, Iza. So, what is exactly is a tariff? A tariff is a charge or a duty on a trade commodity as it passes across a national border. Most commonly, we talk about import tariff, which taxes on goods coming in. Export tariff are rare, which is the US actually bans them, though countries like Ghana and Brazil still tax exports like cocoa and coffee. So, there are two types of tariff, which is import tariff, duties imposed on goods entering a country, and export tariff, which is imposed on goods leaving a country. So here we have three types of tariff and how the tax is calculated. First, we have ad valorem tariff, which is a percentage of the item's value, like GST with 5% on a 1,000 ringgit item is 50 ringgit. On a 2,000 ringgit item, it is 100 ringgit. It scales with price. Next, second we have specific tariff, which is a flat fee per unit regardless of value. For example, a flat 100 ringgit charge whether the item costs 1,000 ringgit or 5,000 ringgit. And for the last, we have compound tariff. We have compound tariff, which is a mix of both. You pay the percentage and the flat fee. Okay, next, governments use tariff for three main reasons, which is to control trade flows, protect local industries, and also generate revenue. Keep that in mind. It becomes very relevant in our case study coming up. Now I will pass it to Shuhada, who will explain why economists actually prefer no tariff at all, and what happens when theory meets reality.
Thanks, Yasmin. Now we move on to the free trade in theory versus protection in practice. In theory, economists love free trade, which is no tariff, no quotas, and no restriction. Why? Because of comparative advantage. Every country focuses on what it does best, then they trade. This boosts global output and lower price for everyone. But here's the catch: the benefits are shared equally. Consumers win the cheaper goods, but local industry that can compete with cheap import lose. Companies shut down, and then the workers lost the job. So this affected group pressure their government to protect them, and government often listen because political stability matters too, and not just economic efficiency. Now we continue to the 5 arguments for protecting jobs. The first is protecting workers from cheap foreign labor. The second is helping young industry grow. The third is reducing unemployment. And the fourth is improving the balance of payment. And the last is the maintaining living standard. But protection is not free, but is raise price, reducing competitive and waste resource. I will actually measure this cost shortly using real numbers. Now I will pass it to Aisha, who bring this to the life with our first case study. Malaysia's own tariff dispute with the US.
Thank you, Shuhada. Now let's look at a real example. For our case study, 19% US tariff on Malaysia, a nation caught in the crossfire. The problem? In April 2025, the US government under Trump made a new rule. They say any country that sells more to the US than it buys from the US will get extra tax. Malaysia got hit by this because we sell a lot of electronic to the US. By 1st August 2025, the US said Malaysia must pay a 19% tax on goods sold to them. This was actually lower than before. They said first 25%, then cut it to the 19%. But then it got worse. Trump also said he might add 100% tax just on a computer chip. This is a big deal for us because Malaysia is the 6th biggest chip selling country in the world. In 2024, we sell RM119 billion worth of electronic to the US, and more than half of that, RM90.6 billion was just from chips. Now we move on to the unfair part. Not all Malaysian products got the same treatment. Computer chips got a temporary free pass, which is no tax for now. But other things like furniture, rubber, palm oil and machines did not get a free pass. These items makes up about 40% of what we sell to the US. And even the chip free pass was not safe. The US said it could be changed. So, how Malaysia deal with it? Malaysia did not fight back with our own taxes. Instead, we talk. Our Trade Ministry, MITI, worked with Bank Negara to find a solution. By October 2025, both countries agreed on a deal, which is the 90% tax stay the same, but over 1,700 Malaysian products are now tax-free. Computer chips are still being reviewed separately. The main point from this show that the tax rules between countries are not just numbers on paper. They affect real factories, real workers, and need real teamwork to solve. I will now hand back to Shuhada, who will show us exactly how to measure the economic damage from this 90% tariff using a simple diagram.
Now, let's connect this back to the theory using a two-cost partial equilibrium analysis. We zoom into one market and see how a tariff changes price, supply, demand, and overall welfare. When the US imposed its 90% tariff, the domestic price raised into PW plus T. This creates four effects. The first is consumption effect. Demand falls since Malaysia import are now prices for US buyers. The second is production effect. US producers increase output since they can sell at a higher price. The third effect is trade. Import shrink overall. And the fourth is revenue effect. The US government collect tariff revenue. In terms of welfare, consumer loss, producer gains, and government gains, but overall there's a net loss called deadweight loss. This is inefficiency production that should be happening and consumption that's been unfairly blocked. There's one more key concept, the effective rate of protection. The real burdens of a tariff can be much higher than its look. For example, Malaysian furniture was 500 with 300 of import inputs, has only 200 of local value added. A 90% tariff on a 500 product equal to 95 ringgit compared to 95 ringgit to 200 value added, that's actually a 47.5% effective protection rate, where higher than the 90% headline numbers. Imagine you only really own 40% of a cake, but someone takes the whole cake. Your actually portion gets hit much harder than the tax rate suggests. Now, I will pass back to Yasmin, who will introduce the other tools governments use beside tariff, the non-tariff barriers.
Thanks, Shuhada. Beyond tariff, government have other tools called non-tariff barrier or NTB. The difference, tariff control trade through price, NTB control it through quantity, rules or procedure. As tariff got negotiated down globally, NTB grew more important. Quick rundown of the main types, which is import quotas, a direct limit on import quantity requiring license. If not auctioned fairly, license holders earn unfair profit. Next, voluntary export restraints, which is VER. An exporting country agrees to limit its on exports voluntarily, usually under pressure to avoid harsher restrictions. We will see exactly this in the next case study. Next, domestic content requirements, which is a law requiring a percentage of a product be made locally, which usually raises average cost and gets passed to consumers. Next, export subsidies, which tax breaks or cheap loans to boost exports that can count as disguised dumping. Next, we have anti-dumping duties, which used when a company sells a product abroad cheaper than at home to offset that unfair price gap. Next, international quotas, which suppliers across countries agreeing to cut production and raise price, like OPEC did with oil in the 1970. So, tariff and NTB are really two sides of the same coin. Both protect domestic interests, just through different mechanisms. Now, I will pass it to Aisyah, who will show how Malaysia actually used a voluntary export restraint in real life.
Thank you, Yasmin. Our second case study connects to what Yasmin just said about countries limiting their own export. The problem, Malaysia chip checkpoint. In early 2025, police in Singapore caught 3 men. They were accused of sending NVIDIA AI chips used for things like ChatGPT and AI servers through a fake companies trying to send them to China. This worried the US government because America does not allow these advanced chips to go to China directly. The US started to think Malaysia might be used as a middleman for this chip through sneak through. So, the US began making the new rules to watch Malaysia and Thailand more closely, almost like how they already watch China. What Malaysia did? Malaysia act fast before the US could punish us. On July 2025, our Trade Ministry MITI made a new rule called Directive No. 1, 2025. This rule says anyone who wants to send a powerful AI chip through Malaysia, even just passing through, not even selling here, must first get a special permit. This applies even to items not officially on any banned list, as long as there is no reason to suspect misuse. In simple words, Malaysia restricted itself first before being forced to. So, What is the effect of this case study? The effect, companies like data centers and chip sellers now need more paperwork and permits, which cost more time and money. Malaysia Johor data center area, a place many foreign investors want to build AI infrastructure, now feels more uncertain. On one hand, this rule shows Malaysia is responsible and follows global standard, but it also shows the world that Malaysia was flagged as a risky transit point. And here's the irony. Months later, the US still plan to add stricter rules on Malaysia anyway. Also, even after the US relaxed some chips rule for China, Malaysia did not loosen our own rule. Once a country restricts itself, it does not easily go back, even if outside pressure goes down. Now, I will pass it back to Iza, who will bring everything together and close us out.
Thanks, Aisha. Now let's zoom out and tie everything together. Tariff affect the whole economy, not just one product price. The change of effect, price rises, consumer buy less, producer benefit and expand, import more, and government earns revenue. But the gains to producer and government do not fully offset consumer losses, leaving debt weight loss and net cost to society. There are also longer-term issues, which is income redistribution, which is consumer pay more, producer and government gain. Resources misallocation, which is labor and capital, shift to inefficient protected industry, and a hidden cost of protection. Sometimes, what consumer pay to save a few jobs is actually more than the benefit those workers receive. Connecting two case studies. Case study 1 show how tariff directly hurts export competitiveness, which is forcing Malaysia into negotiation. And the case study 2 show how non-tariff barrier can manage geopolitical risk, but at the end, the cost of higher compliance burdens for businesses. Financially, both tariff and NTP are double-edged sword, where they protect local jobs and industry, but also raise prices and create inefficiency. The real lessons from Malaysia 2035 experience is that smart negotiation and diversification matter more than retaliation. All our facts and figures are sourced from credibility outlets, Khazanah Research Institute, Free Malaysia Today, and the official US Trade Representative fact sheet. Full references are available on this slide for anyone who wants to read further. That's all for our presentation. Thank you.